Good morning, everyone, or good evening, or good night, wherever you are in the world. And welcome to day 2 of the 2022 Virtual Island Summit. Thanks for joining us in the first session today. My name is Linda Carty, and I currently live in France, but I'm actually from the beautiful island of St. Martin in the Caribbean. And I'm actually also the new digital marketing analyst at Island Innovation. I'm very happy to have joined the team recently. Taking part in driving sustainable change across island communities and amplifying the voices of island innovators is what I love. And it's exactly what we are doing at Island Innovation. To know more about us, please visit islandinnovation.co, our website. And also don't forget to share your participation on social media with the hashtag VIS2022. Before we begin with our great speakers, please introduce yourself and let us know where you are from. I already see a few people that are saying where they're from. You will also see a poll that appears on your screen. Please respond to this poll so we can know where you are connecting from. So in the chat, I see people from Indonesia, from Hawaii. I also see Uganda, Seychelles Islands, wow, Cambodia, Cabo Verde, Maldives, Burundi, South Africa, people from around the world, and Fiji also. We have a lot of people from Europe, from Africa, the Caribbean also. That's great. Thank you all for being here. So to all participants, please make sure to ask questions in the Q&A function so we can share with the speakers. And thank you all again for being part of this international event. And I will hand over to our moderator, Anceliana Ramos, Deputy to the Mayor's Office at Câmara Municipal de Cascais. Anceliana.
Hi everyone, hope you all well. And like Linda said, welcome to the second day of the Virtual Island Summit. My name is Anceliana Ramos and I'm from São Tomé e Príncipe, that is a small island country in Gulf of Guinea in Central Africa. To begin our session, I'm gonna call the Prime Minister of Waste Management and Energy from Mombasa County, Dr. Godfrey Nato.
Thank you, Anceliana. Can you see my presentation?
That looks great. You can go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think Anceliana has introduced me as the Prime Minister for Mombasa, but I don't have such a title. I'm the County Minister responsible for Environment, Waste Management and Energy in the County of Mombasa. For those who are not familiar with Mombasa, Mombasa is the second largest city in Kenya with a population of about 1.2 million people as of now. And the central business district is largely an island, I would say. And I think that's why I've been invited to make my remarks in this very, very important conference. So I think I will make a few presentations. I mean, I have a few slides to make my presentation today. Under the title Action and Adaptation in the African Islands, rising to meet the challenges of climate change in Mombasa City. And I want to start by running through what I will say are the climate-related challenges that we are facing in the city of Mombasa. And the first one that we, I think, have started experiencing is the issue of the rising sea level, coastal erosion, and bleaching of the coral reefs. And this rising sea levels has implication on a number of services to the people of Mombasa. The first one being the intrusion of salt water into the estuaries, the boreholes, and other freshwater aquifers. And this is something that we are already experiencing. And then the coastal erosion also has implication on our key, I would say, historical and cultural monuments. For those who have been in Mombasa, we have a very old monument called Fort Jesus, and at the moment it's under threat from the coastal erosion as a result of sea level rise. Then we have challenges related to reduced water supply from transbasin transfer of water. I think what is key to note here is that Mombasa as an island doesn't have its fresh water source. And so we rely on the transbasins that are around Mombasa within the jurisdictions of other counties. And we are currently experiencing a reduction in the amount of water that we receive from those areas. And this has been a key concern for us. Number three, I would say the increase in the incidence and severity of vector and waterborne diseases. I think for a long time we've been grappling with malaria as our main vector-borne disease, but right now we are experiencing high instances of other diseases like dengue fever. We have another one called chikungunya. I don't have an answer for that. And this, we attribute them to the increasing in temperature, which makes the insects such as mosquito to thrive very well in the environment that we are in Mombasa at the moment. The number four, we have experienced incidental population displacements from climate disaster prone areas. Most of our slum areas, I would say, sit on sensitive marine ecosystems around the island. And every time we have flash floods, people get displaced from these areas. Then we have reduced density and species composition in our mangrove forest and ecosystem. And this we attribute it to the high instances of rainfall that are experienced occasionally. And then the salinity levels that have also gone high, and this therefore affects the thriving of the mangrove ecosystem, and this results in the loss of fish species and other related consequences. And then it has been reported that Mombasa as an island will be submerging in the coming years. And since it has a thriving port, the port that is actually the entry to East Africa, we expect then that the ship docking infrastructure will be affected in the due course. But having said those challenges, do we have any contribution as an island to the greenhouse emissions? I will say yes. And one of the ways in which we feel that we have contributed to the greenhouse emissions is the challenges we are experiencing with the management of municipal solid waste. Within the island and in the county in general, we don't really have what I would call a sanitary landfill. And so the waste that we collect, which is attributed to about, I think estimated to be about 900 tons per day, is openly disposed. And so this brings challenges of methane emission and the rest. Then number two, we have had major infrastructural development projects, I would say, around the island, and the picture shows one of the major road infrastructure. Seeing from the picture, this area where the road has been constructed, actually the mangrove forests have been destroyed, and this has reduced our capacity to absorb the carbon dioxide. So our capacity as carbon sink with respect to the mangrove forest has been dwindling because of this infrastructure developments that have been initiated both by the county government and the national government. The other contribution I will say is related to our unregulated transport sector and energy consumption. Most of our mobility within the island and around the island is through three-wheeler three-wheeler automobiles and 14-seater minibuses that we call matatus in Mombasa. And we project that by early this year, I think, no, by the end of this year, we'll be having in the neighborhood of 13,000 three-wheeler automobiles and probably an equivalent amount of the 14-seater and associated transport means. And these use diesel, and as you know, diesel, I mean, the fossil fuels are a big contributor of greenhouse gas emissions. And so what are our current actions? We have quite a number of actions that we have put in place, but I'll just highlight on a few for the sake of time. Number one, as a county, we have developed a number of legislative documents that highlights or gives commitment to addressing a number of climate-related issues, ranging from the transport sector, energy sector, waste management, tourism, health, natural resource capital, and build environment. And I just want to highlight a few of these policy documents. We enacted a climate change policy last year, 2021, that then gives commitments of the county for the next 5 years on what we will do to adapt and mitigate climate change. And then we have a Solid Waste Management Act. This was also enacted in 2021. And the basis of this is to transit from the linear model of waste management to basically a circular economy. And then the transport policy 2020 that focuses on establishment of non-motorized transport so that people can be encouraged to walk and cycle. And of course, the health policy that then will address the issue of vector-borne and communicable diseases. In terms of institutional framework, we have established an emergency operational center domiciled in the Department of Health. And this will be very, very instrumental in helping in emergency response wherever we have climate-related disasters. And then we have also established a climate change unit that will then coordinate the mainstreaming of climate change in all the sectors that we have in the city of Mombasa. We, as I mentioned earlier also, we have put in place measures to transition to a circular economy, basically by encouraging segregation of waste at source, recycling activities, and the extraction of energy from waste. So this is ongoing. Research and development, right now we are trying to get the baseline data on how much greenhouse gas emissions we are emitting from our transport sector. In terms of infrastructure responses, what you can see in that picture is one of our old monument or cultural site called Fort Jesus. And as you can see, it has been under the threat of coastal erosion. And so what the national government and the county government have done now is to develop reinforcement infrastructure around the fort so that then it can be protected from the coastal erosion. Of course, I mentioned earlier about material recovery facilities that will encourage recycling and also the development of non-motorized infrastructure, which we are doing very well at the moment. I will say that we have almost close to 1,000 kilometers of pedestrian walkways and cycling lanes that have been developed in Mombasa. In terms of developing the carbon sink, we have an aggressive mangrove restoration initiative. And this basically we are working with the communities and other agencies that are domiciled in the county. And the approach that we have is that any agency that wants to help us in restoring the mangrove ecosystem adopts a site, whether it's 1 acre, 2 acres, and every year they come to that site to plant a number of mangrove seedlings, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, whatever. And right up to now, I think we have had a very, very impressive uptake of this initiative. And I can assure you that our mangrove ecosystem is actually being restocked accordingly. This is just an example of the non-motorized infrastructure. the walkways that we are developing across the city. And as you can see, those walkways are, the cabros are colored red. And so anybody who sees a red cabro walkway, they are not supposed to be encouraged to either cycle on them or drive a motorized means on them. So these, I would say, are some of the brief initiatives that we are taking as a county to make sure that we mitigate or adapt to the changing climate. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sir Minister. Now let's hear from the founding chair of African Rising for Justice, Peace and Dignity, Kumi Naidu.
Hi everyone, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
So greetings, and let me say that I'm one of the few people at this conference who's not from a island nation state. And but I'm reminded how people with power and dominance globally often in conversations will describe to island states as the middle of nowhere, because they are so remote. And I want to just tell you a story that when the climate negotiations collapsed in Copenhagen in 2009, there was a deep sense, already as early as that, failure to act at that point was going to make things for people in island communities exceptionally difficult. And in July of 2015, when I was in the Pacific Island states, I learned a new slogan, which went like this: 1.5, we might survive. 1.5, we might survive. And unfortunately, 6 months after that, when I met the same folks in the Paris climate negotiations, they were chanting 1.5, we might survive. So within that context, we have to be clear, if I look at it from an African perspective, that our African leaders are suffering from a bad case of denial or cognitive dissonance, where they know something needs to be done, but they feel it's far too complicated and therefore continue doing the same thing without changing what needs to be changed. So, when we look at African islands and coastal states, we're talking about more than 116 million people or so inhabit them. And we will certainly be seeing sea level rise and other challenges that I've mentioned from the Mombasa case already that suggest that things are going to be quite tough moving forward. So, let's say from an island nation state perspective, if we are at 1.2 already degrees of warming, and we're already seeing such extreme weather events, and with the projections around sea level rise, we almost have to fight at two levels. At one level, we have to push the best fight to ensure that the changes are made fast enough so that the survivability of island nations is as enhanced as possible, right? But on the other hand, as is the case with Kiribati in the Pacific, for example, where Kiribati has already had to negotiate with Fiji for long-term leases, 99-year leases, if they need to relocate the entire population. So let's be very clear. Climate-induced migration, which is creating climate refugees, even though that's not a legally recognized term, a lot of them are going to come from island nation states. And to the rich nations of the world that have contributed to this problem and have created the situation, it's critically important that they recognize that they have to address, to take responsibility for the challenges that lie ahead. I beg your pardon, there's a bird making a lot of noise. When we think about what this means is, what we're talking about genuinely climate injustice, because in the sense that the people that lead the lowest carbon lifestyles are suffering the brutal consequences of the climate crisis. And the question is arise within this context of, a lot of people even saying that maybe it's too late and so on. I take a position that island nations in particular need to be asserting that pessimism is a luxury we simply cannot afford, that we continue to fight as hard as we can to protect legitimate places of historical human settlement, and also recognize that island nations also play a very important role in actually protecting our marine ecosystem. So the one important thing to look at, which impacts on island nation states a lot, is whether there will be financial support from the global system. And in 2009 at Copenhagen, we won the idea of $100 billion annually in a green climate fund from 2020. It's already 2022, and sadly, rich nations have not fulfilled that promise yet. They need to be pressurized into doing so. But on top of that, there is a call, and in this COP that takes place in Egypt in a couple of weeks' time, there is a call for more focus on loss and damage. That is to say, how does, for example, now with Puerto Rico, a island state within a mega state, how do we ensure that we are able to respond to the challenges that come from a situation like Hurricane Maria? So the loss and damage that Puerto Rico experienced, it's not fair to expect Puerto Rico or many other island nation states that are facing such heavy losses and damages as a result of the actions taken historically by rich nations of the world. And therefore, we're saying there has to be a special fund for loss and damages, and particularly benefiting island nations, because they are often in the front line of the impacts of climate change, and also in terms of climate impacts. So in this context of people feeling that, wow, the cards are stacked against us, I would just like to conclude by asking the organizers to put on the slide that I had sent them, that in this moment we need to recognize that for island nations as well as for people around the world, that right now the biggest success, the biggest thing that can deliver our success is we get very, very much more smarter with regard to how we understand the power of people, right? Because I think activism sometimes thinks that because people have suffered slavery, colonialism, and a whole range of other injustices over time, that people don't have agency. And I think that a critical success factor, if you are to avert catastrophic climate change, has to be addressing the question of how do we mobilize the largest numbers of people ever seen to act collectively in a time when the science says we've got just a decade or less than a decade and we are running out of time. So what's on your screen is just giving you a picture. It's not a complete thing. I'm sure you can add things to it, but to remind ourselves that we have to offer people multiple ways of participation in the climate fight. People will choose to be involved in different ways, and smart activism in this moment is not preaching to people what they should do and how they should do it, but creating an enabling broad canvas where people can take multiple actions. So you'll see I divided this into 4 quadrants: harnessing our autonomy, harnessing our creative participation, harnessing our wealth, and harnessing our consumption. And each of the, you read everything in each of the quadrants from the center. People have power as citizens and voters, contested as that might be, as litigators, being able to take people to court, and so on. But I want to focus on the creative participation quadrant. One of the problems with climate activism is also speaking in a way that doesn't resonate with people, and we need to speak in ways that are much more accessible, and using arts and culture, or artivism as many of us call it today, as a way to reach ordinary people with these complicated messages that speak to the arts is critically necessary. And then harness our wealth. You might think, well, we don't really have that many wealthy people, but there are examples where people as a collective I've seen it in Australia, I've seen it in South Africa, I've seen it in many parts of the world, where people organize and say to the banks, you should not be lending to things that are going to damage our children's future and damage the environment and so on. You will find that we have more power than we often think about. And of course, harnessing our consumption, given that we consume everything, we need to be better at understanding what that consumptive power is and how we can deploy it. And I end by saying that the challenge here, obviously, is that we have to do this at the global level, right? Island nations are very small, and we have AOSIS, the Association of Small Island States, for example, as well as we have the least vulnerable, Common Vulnerable Forum, as it's called, which is the most vulnerable countries in the world, which include many island nations. And we need to push and support those efforts to, even within the COP, to succeed more. So with the solutions, we need to recognize intersectionality is critically necessary. We can't continue to treat climate as if it's not an issue about water, health, employment, and so on, because it is. We need to get much better at putting pressure on shifting fossil money that's going to fossil fuels very fast to money that's going to renewable energy and other positive initiatives. We also need to look at how we go after banks and other people who are lending money to climate destroying carbon projects. And lastly, I would say we have to stop believing that what we need in this current moment after COVID is system recovery, system maintenance, and system protection. What we urgently need right now is system innovation, system redesign, and system transformation. It would be a terrible tragedy if dominant nations of the world who are populous much more and who have larger economies pretend that people in the hundreds of millions, when you combine them from all island states in the world, are simply dispensable. We have to assert at this conference and always that the lives of people on islands, especially the smallest islands, are as important as the lives of people in the United States or Europe. So I want to end with this sense, to be realistic of the moment we're in. The window of opportunity, right? The window of opportunity is critically important that we recognize is closing and is fast closing. But the window of opportunity is there. And even though we are running out of time, we must believe in this moment that it is within the capability of human ingenuity to turn this thing around. And we cannot have any comprehensive, just solutions without island nations being a central part of the solution. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your sharing. That was really inspiring. We will finish with Dr. Cherish Stansidin Star, especially in Stubborn Island for coordinator of Network of the Islands of Lower Casamance for the Integrated Management Coastal Zones.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Hi, everybody. It's a great pleasure for me to take part in this virtual summit, and more particularly in this panel related to climate change and adaptation in the African islands. So my name is Sherif Samsidin Sar, and I'm the coordinator of the Lower Casamance Islands Network for the Integrated Management of Coastal Zones. It's a legal association which brings together 21 villages located in the small islands of southern Senegal. So let me tell you about our small islands in two aspects. First, I will make a small geographical presentation of the islands. And on the other hand, I will share the main challenges related to climate change in the impact of climate change in local development, and how we are organizing ourselves to face these different challenges. On the coast of West Africa, in the geographical region called Rivière du Sud, there is a set of small islands with the same geographical characteristic. They are very small islands. They are rural islands. And we have here the predominance of mangrove vegetation and the river meanders. Among these estuarine islands, you have those that are very well known by both the scientific community and the biodiversity conservation community. For example, you have the islands of the archipelago of Bijagos in the Republic of Guinea-Bissau, but many other islands close to the mainland of Senegal and Guinea-Bissau, for example, are almost unknown even by the public structures of the respective countries and by the organization working on the field of development. However, in these small islands forgotten by the development agendas, there are thousands of population who, without exaggeration, are among the greatest victims of the climate change and the isolation in West Africa. For example, in the southern region of Senegal, where I live, there is 56 islands, among which you have 9 islands that are permanently inhabited, 21 other islands that are exclusively used for agriculture, and 26 islands entirely composed of mangrove vegetation. The 80 square kilometers, and the other one 6 kilometers square. In Senegal, these small islands are among the area that are very vulnerable on climate change for principal for 2 main reasons. On the one hand, for example, with the irregularity and seasonality of rainfall in a context of sea level rise, population have a precarious access to drinking water. The groundwater is contaminated by saline intrusion, and during a good part of the rainless season, it's very, very difficult to extract water from the groundwater, because we are in a rural zone and the population in our islands use the well as principal source of water, of safe water. On the other hand, we have also the coastal erosion and the sea level rise that impact the agriculture sector. Many lands which allow our ancestors to have a food self-sufficiency are today invaded by salt, salinization, and many families have either abandoned the rice cultivation or drastically reduced their agricultural activities. So also we have a very important problem of coastal erosion. Given the remoteness and the rurality of these small islands, the local population have been the victim of geographical and very often administrative discrimination, which means that the islands were completely invisible in the local, national, and international development agenda. After several attempts by us to create a framework between all the islanders for better advocacy, we benefit in 2015 from the support of a partner who accompanied us to organize a general assembly on the islands of Caravan for the creation of the Association of Islanders. It's a sort of a parliament composed of representatives of the different villages. In this network, what we are doing, we work on 3 aspects. The first aspect is to develop and strengthen the bonds of solidarity and cohabitation between the population of the islands. The second aspect is to advocate for providing better visibility of islands' problems to public authorities, researchers, and partners, and fight against the geographical exclusion of our islands. And the third aspect is to develop projects, to look for partnership, to develop projects that are focused on the priorities of the islands and with relation with environment and climate change. today, for example, September 27, we have a general meeting in my island, in the islands of Caravan, to evaluate our activities and to set new objectives. So just after my participation here, I will join all the islanders coming from the different villages for a 3-day program. So I would like to end my speech by thanking the organizers of the summit for the excellent opportunity to exchange between various island communities and for networking. Our association is very interested in integrating international network of islands for sharing experience and developing projects. So I invite you also to come and discover our beautiful islands of Senegal. Before I finish, I would like to share some pictures of impact of climate change in Senegal, in the islands. Okay, I don't know if you see my.
Yes, please put into presentation mode.
Okay.
Perfect.
So here, for example, you have the list of the islands members of the network of our association, and in these maps you see that we are very, very small islands. We are not it's my investigation of in my PhD. I try to do the mapping of the island, because one of the challenges is also to give a scientific visibility, because before the partners come in the island to develop projects, they need to know to have many information about the islands. So here are some pictures of coastal erosion. We have lost in the island of Joge, for example, schools that were in the shorelines, and we have many people that have moved to the continent, because it's very complicated. Here you have the sea level rise impact in the islands of Caravan. So I thank you very much for the opportunity you give me to share the experience of our islands, and I'm here if you have any question or if you want to know more about our island. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for all of your sharing to all the speakers. I just want to say that by sharing our experience and solution, we will be able to overcome our challenge as our islands in the world, and then move towards a better future. Now, I would like to begin the Q&A session. Please, whoever wants to make a question, feel free and don't hesitate. I want to start with a question made by Danielson, I think that's the name. He would like to know what are the practical measurements that are taken in place in order to face the problem of municipal solid waste. This question is for the Minister, Godfrey Nato. I don't know, Mr. Minister, if you want me to repeat the question.
Yeah, thank you. I think I've gotten the question. I think one of the main challenges, all of you will agree, that islands, particularly those ones that are densely populated, are facing, is managing municipal solid waste. And like, for example, the Kenyan experience, the management of solid waste is a devolved function. So Kenya has a devolved system. We have the national government and the county government, which plays at the local level. So the county government has that onerous responsibility of managing the solid waste in its jurisdiction. And one thing that we realized for Mombasa City is that waste collection is very, very expensive. And if it's left to government with the dwindling resources, government may not really manage. I remember by 2017, our collection efficiency was about 25%. And we realized that this is difficult for us. So what we have decided to do is to engage a community-based organization and other private players in the collection itself. So basically in Mombasa, what's happening now is the community-based organizations, individual players, young people, companies will do the actual collection, get paid by the waste generators, and then they take that waste to designated transfer stations. So the government of the county now picks from the transfer stations and transport the waste to the final disposal site. So that has helped us to increase our collection efficiency to about 56 to 60 at the moment. So I will say that it has worked. But also transportation is expensive. Hauling or evacuating 900 tons of solid waste per day is also not easy. And what we have realized that if you look at the waste stream, probably about 30% is composed of materials that can be retrieved and can be used to feed the recycling industry. So what we are doing now is to encourage community-based organizations and other players to retrieve the materials from the waste stream, then take them to designated places where we link them with recycling companies. And so that we are, in that way, we are generating green enterprises, but also we are reducing the volume of waste that finally is transported to the final disposal site. So we have had quite a number of interests in the recycling industry in Mombasa now. We used to have about 5% or thereabout recycling, the proportion of waste recycled, but I think now that figure is probably ranging between 15 and 20% thereabout, particularly for plastic waste, cardboards, metals, basically those and glass, those materials that can be retrieved are being recycled now. That will be my response to the question.
Okay, just a follow-up question. Do you think that just the municipality is the one authority will be able to manage this waste, or private companies with license, of course, will do that too? What's the best option?
For me, I think with my experience, the best option is for the municipality to license private players, and then basically the municipality will play a regulatory role. That way, it becomes easier for waste to be actually managed.
Okay, thank you very much for your answer. Next question is from, I hope I'm saying the names right, Roxanne Graham. She says, given sea level rise, flooding, and coastal erosion, what are some of the informal ways local communities might be dealing with this? What are the best way local communities can deal with sea flood, erosion, losing territory? This question is for every one of the speakers who wants to answer.
So thank you for the question. There are a range of solutions, some of which we've heard here today, that communities are exploring, and there's lessons to be learned, from the experience elsewhere. So part of the challenge we have is, as has been mentioned, our freshwater is under such attack as a result of sea level rise and so on. And so I've seen massive mangrove planting initiatives and so on that have taken place in different parts of the world that can reverse things. And the other important thing is, we've seen this in many parts of the world, including in Senegal, when the government some 7 years ago, well, before the elections, they said there was going to be a 6-month moratorium on fishing, right? And there was a moratorium on fishing because many of the licenses had given corruptively to various European fishing interests and so on. And in that 6 months that the fishing, there was not this mass scale trawlers coming and taking everything, people in the coastlines who thought that certain types of fish had died or had become extinct started returning and so on. So nature has the immense capability of replenishing itself and, reproducing itself, but we need to create the possibilities for that to happen. And that's why, in the big global demand for trying to have at least 20% of our oceans being declared as reserves. Can I just say one thing briefly on the earlier question, if I might?
Sure.
I'll leave it to my two brothers there from Senegal and the Prime Minister of Mombasa, as you promoted him, to answer on the more specific level. If I don't mind, I just want to take that issue about energy and make a broader point. One of the things on waste, one of the things that is clear is we don't win on the changes that we need to make if we put things in an environmental box, a development box, a human rights box. We need to understand the intersectionality of all these issues, and only if we approach these issues in an intersectional way do we stand a chance to turn things around. So, in 2009, before I joined Greenpeace and I didn't understand that much about energy, I discovered by accident that the city of Uppsala in Sweden runs its buses on human feces, poo, crap, whatever you call it. And I discovered that, and then shortly thereafter, I discovered that, the Bristol in England also does the same, and many cities. And we know in the African continent, we got an issue about the removal, the disposal of human waste, right? Human waste safely. And that's not only for Africa, so the kinds of solutions we need moving forward is one where we get double wins, win-win, right? So like when I spoke at the African Union 50th anniversary in Addis Ababa, I challenged the African leaders. I said, listen, I discovered this issue about the people in Europe are running the buses on shit. And I say, I refuse to accept that European shit is better than African shit. We just have to get our shit together and turn the crisis of climate change into an opportunity. And unless we are connecting employment, disposal, climate things together, and employment, of course, we are not going to succeed. So intersectionality is a key part of the solution. Thank you.
Thank you. Another question from Sheikh, I think that's the name, from Indonesia. She says, many countries in development countries have problems with gap of capabilities and competence in the governments. So what are the strategies that we can implement to encourage top-bottom synergy in political realms?
I wanted to add something about the last question.
Okay.
About the different initiatives we are developing to face the climate change. In Casamance, for example, in the south of Senegal, we are developing many activities of mangrove reforesting, because it's very important. As you see in the map I show of the islands, the space where you can live or where you can develop agriculture the land is very small, and the most of the area in the islands are mangrove areas. So the mangrove is protecting us against coastal erosion. So we try to develop reforestation, but also as we need the mangrove ecosystem, because with the blue economy, so we try also to give like to develop the capacity of the women, for example, who are developing their economic activity with the mangrove activity, not to destroy, not to cut, for example, the tree of the mangrove, because if we destroy the mangrove, we will be the first victim of it. And also in the island of Caravan, for example, we have forbidden the use of sand mine, because to build you need sand, and as the sea level rise, it's a very big problem for us. So if we are the first person who extract our sand, so it will make us in a vulnerable situation. So we try to do many activities of advocacy, and I think that we start now getting more opportunities, more projects coming from the government, from the NGOs to try to develop our area.
Thank you. And Celiana, just a quick one from me. I think to begin with, Naido, I'm not the Prime Minister of Mombasa. I think I mentioned, I corrected that. I'm the
I was deliberately joking. Sorry, I was acknowledging the promotion that the moderator had given you.
Thank you. So with that, I want to support your idea. I think issues that islands are facing, they touch across many sectors, affect many services, and they cut across different administrative structures, if you put it that way. And so there is need to have a multi-sectoral approach towards the island issue. So it's not an issue that maybe the municipality can do it alone or the community can do it alone. Everybody must be brought on board. And there must be a forum where all sectors sit on one table and plan together if the actions that we take will be meaningful. On the issue of communities' involvement in the protection of the coastal areas from coastal erosion, I'll look at it in two ways. One, there are some areas where still we can survive with the natural defenses. And I think communities can be encouraged to establish the natural based enterprises like mangrove establishment, and they can do beekeeping within them and that kind of stuff, and a livelihood, but at the same time protect those coastlines. But then there are some areas that are heavily affected and may need constructed defenses. And I think this could be heavy investment, and so it may require a national government even to come in and establish such defenses before the natural defenses are established after the protection is done. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we have time for one more question. Then I'm going to follow up to the one I made before. That is, since we have in some countries, in some islands, lack of skills and competence in government, both local and central, what are the strategies, in your point of view, that we can implement to make sure we overcome these fragilities? Anyone? Do you guys understand the question?
Can you repeat the question?
Sorry, didn't hear you. You want me to repeat the question?
Repeat the question, please. All of us seem to have not got it.
Okay, no problem. I was saying that many countries have a gap with having competence and skilled people in both local and central governments. That way, in your opinion, in your experience, what are the best strategies that we can implement to help encourage bottom-up synergies in political realms so we can overcome these fragilities that we have?
Okay, for my case, for example, what we are doing, we try to support, for example, young men or young girls of the islands who are in the different universities and who want to develop investigation about different items of the island development. So we used to encourage them, because we are the islanders, and no one is coming to start to develop the competencies and to develop the islands different from us. That's why we try to do it. And also we develop a program of a voluntary program, an international voluntary program, where, for example, if we have an expert from Australia, from Spain, from South Africa, who want to spend 1 month, 2 months in our islands, we try to work with him. We try to see how he can help us, for example, to write a project or to identify a project or to develop a partnership program, etc., etc. So we try to complement our lack of expertise with other people and trying to promote scientific investigation in the islands.
That's very nice. I will make one last question. That is, since our team is the climate change, how can we, island, overcome or manage it after disaster? For example, a tsunami or something. We are very exposed to this kind of disaster. So what is the best way that we can manage it after something happened?
I don't know. It's a difficult question, Anteliana. Trying to imagine a tsunami in Mombasa, for example, I don't think we have imagined that. But I wanted to touch on the issue raised on competence and skills, maybe before I come to that one. I think if we operate in silos, then we will have problems with competency and skills, because then in one organization, you may lack that. But these competencies are available in other entities within our jurisdiction. And so the best way is to create a system where we talk to each other, we share issues and try to address problems together. You will be amazed at how these skills are actually available within our countries, if I put it that way. So in Mombasa, for example, we have established what we call a Mombasa Smart City Forum. And every year we meet once and we draw people from the universities, research organizations, national government agencies, and county governments to deliberate on a particular problem. Like tomorrow we'll be deliberating on the issue of plastic waste management. And so researchers come on board to give their views, national agencies come on board to indicate to us what strategies they have in place, and then we kind of synergize all those efforts and address the problem. Preparation for tsunami and the rest, I think what we need to do is just to get ready in whatever way we can. Try as much as possible to climate proof our infrastructure, climate proof our agriculture, climate proof our health systems, so that in case a tsunami or whatever disaster comes, at least we can manage. That is what I will say.
Thank you. It was a really hard question. So given the time, I just would like to thank you all, the speakers, for being with us today and share your experience and knowledge. I also would like to thank the audience for staying with us and making questions. And now I'm going to call Linda Carty to follow up with the panel.
Thank you, Mrs. Ramos, and thank you to all speakers. It's already the end of the session, and it was really a great panel, a great discussion, and also a continued call to action against climate change. I would like also to thank all the participants that joined us today. We encourage you to continue using the hashtag VIS2022 on your social media platforms to share your experience and give us your feedback. But this is just the beginning of day 2. The next session, Building Bridges Between SIDS and the African Region for COP27, will start in 2 hours. So I hope that you will be able to join us in 2 hours. Thank you again to everyone, and see you very soon.